Well, I hope you all can hear me good. It's storming like crazy here. The rain is beating on the roof, and I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. Today I'm going to show you how I use 3D printing to repair bodywork. This side cover for my SR500 project actually looks pretty decent. It's just got a broken tab on it right here. And I have repaired tabs in the past on other bikes, and I'll show you a picture of one of them by 3D printing a part and JB welding it in place. And it's held pretty good. So we'll go over the process I use to create these things. Now this assumes that you have some way of drawing on your computer. If you're really good with a 3D scanner, you can 3D scan this part. But what I'm going to do is fairly simple. I'm going to lay it on right here on this piece of paper. And trace around it. And I will scan that in to my CAD software and add it, load it in my CAD software. And then I will print this missing section. The section that is missing right there. I will print that, and I will leave a little backing plate on it. It comes out here as well. To glue it to the end, help glue it and reinforce it to the inside of this. So now, let's walk over to the computer and get that started. And then while it's printing, I'm going to print it in PETG. Now if your motorcycle, if you know it has ABS bodywork, it's made out of ABS plastic, you can print the pieces in ABS and chemically bond them to the part using acetone, which would actually be the best and strongest way to do it. I'm not sure what plastic Yamaha used on these side covers, but it's not ABS. So I'm going to use good old epoxy JB Weld, whatever you have that's strongest. While it's printing, we'll come back and I'll remove this decal without harming the plastic. I'll show you how to do that as well. It ain't easy, but it's quite possible to remove these decals completely without destroying the plastic. Before we go to the computer, there's one more thing we got to do. First of all, I have a notebook here that I keep of all the custom built tools and parts that I make in the workshop. And we'll start here. This is actually my second one. That's why it's only got 2 or 3 pages full. I have another one somewhere that's full. So we need to measure these things. I need the radius of this hole right here, the radius of this curve, and the thickness that the part needs to be. I'm going to be measuring it with a dial caliper. Any old cheap dial caliper will work. Set your dimensions to millimeters for 3D printing. I mean, after all, you are working on a metric motorcycle anyway. But almost all your 3D printers require that you work in millimeters. Okay, the thickness right here. Okay, 3 millimeters. It actually tapers down. I could replicate that, but I don't think it's really necessary. If I wanted to, I could print the part slightly oversized and sand it down. But I think by the time I get through putting all the epoxy and stuff on it, Okay, the inside radius of this hole is a 12 millimeter. That is important because it helps me figure out how high this piece needs to be. Now the rest of this I will do by tracing. Those are the main two dimensions I needed, was the radius of this hole. Let's get the radius of this piece right here. I actually have a radius gauge around here somewhere, but I can look at it. 8 millimeters. Okay, let's go to the computer and do a little CAD work. Then we'll come back and scrape this decal off. Well, we've got a little patch 3D printing. Before we go any further with the side cover details, I guess we'll see if we can get this decal off. You can kind of use your favorite decal remover if you want to. I like WD-40, especially on old ones. It's a really good solvent. And you'll have to take the plastic razor blades and carefully scrape it away, especially when they're old and dried on like this. Sometimes you can peel an edge of them up, peel them off, but as old as these are, I highly doubt that will work. I like using the scrapers in the holder like that, but sometimes it's not flexible enough to get. Well, I'm not even going to show you the whole process. This is just basically how I do this. It's tedious, it takes a while. That's the thing nobody tells you about working on stuff like this. It's just how tedious it can be, how long it takes. Oh, all the TV shows and the highly scripted YouTube channels make it seem as though restoration and customizing is glamorous and exciting, but the truth of the matter is the vast majority of it is endless hours spent doing bullshit like this, scraping off decals and sanding rust and making small parts. So I'm going to go ahead and fade out the camera. I'm basically showing how I get this started here. Like I said, I don't want to gouge this plastic, so I'm using the plastic razor blades, which means it will take longer. There are some chemicals that work, but I have generally found that on old dried up stickers like this that have been out in the sun for decades, there's just really no substitute for a lot of elbow grease and patience. Well, as you can see, we got the lettering and most of the residue off. Since I'm repainting this one, I'm going to use lacquer thinner and just dissolve the rest of this glue up. I did wind up getting a metal single edge razor blade to deal with some of the more stubborn parts of this, because they were just stuck down too hard for the plastic when to move it. The problem with that being, you have to be even more patient, because then you can gouge your bodywork quite harshly. So anyhow, that is all cleaned up. I don't have any gouges or scratches in it. I've got all the residue off. You can see where the lacquer thinner is affecting the paint, but that's okay, because like I said, I'm sanding this one down and giving it a complete paint job. If I would skip the lacquer thinner completely if I were doing it just to remove a decal from a newer bike that I wasn't planning to paint. But that's got that done. Let's go get the parts off the 3D printer. Okay, well, my 3D print went okay. It didn't go exactly as planned. Well, what happened was, here is the replacement part that I printed, and I had added a locating tab to it, but it was too thin and broke off when I was removing it. But that is okay, because it will still fit exactly into place. I just have to get it glued. So here's what I'm going to do now. Okay, before I mix up the epoxy, of course, you can see I've sanded all the gloss off the paint and stuff around where it's going. I have a small piece of wax paper. This is very important. And a clamp. We'll go ahead and mix up. A batch of this. Good old JB Weld. You can really use about any good strong 2-part epoxy for this. This JB Weld has been my go-to choice for most of my entire life. It's not quite the miracle cure some people would have you believe, but it is extremely useful for a large number of things. And I've got way more mixed up here than I really need for this particular job. It's okay, I'll run over and stick another batch of it on something else. Set this into place like so. Make sure it is lined up. Then I will wrap this piece of wax paper over it. Make sure it stays lined up. And then clamp it. Make sure it stays lined up properly. And then carefully clamp it. And now we go away for a few hours and let that dry. Well, it's been a smidgen over 24 hours since we put this part together to dry. I will admit I peeked at it earlier, but take the clamp off a little bit. Take a knife and clean out the epoxy area some. As you can see, it's made a pretty good smear on both sides here. Let's see if I can. trim this up a little bit. A little bit of sandpaper and come inside of here. I'll be sanding it a lot on the outside, more so than the inside, to smooth it out. The inside, I will actually leave it like it is. Let's go over to the bike and put this on and see how it works. Okay, as you can see up here, this is where this is the battery side cover. The slots in the top go here, and the little spot that I just repaired goes around this rubber bushing right in here where my finger is. We're going to snap it in there and see how it fits. It's kind of a pain to do this with one hand, so I'm going to set the camera down a second. Now we will It's hard to see up in there where it goes around, but it's fitting pretty snugly, just as it should. See if we can see any better from this side. Not really, it's too dark under there. I suppose I could get a light. But anyhow, there you go. I got to sand it and paint it all now. But at least the side cover is repaired where it'll snap back in place like it should. So that's it. For this episode, I got a couple of pictures here I'll show you right quick, because I've done some other repairs. For example, the mounting studs on the back of a Honda shadow side cover. As seen in this picture, I had actually 3D printed and then JB welded a replacement for one of those on. And it held for several years till I sold the bike, and as far as I know, it's still holding. Just all kinds of different things you can do while you're working on these old motorcycles. Until next time, keep riding, keep wrenching, and stay crazy.